Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Hey Brittany. This episode is for my binge watch Brittany series. We are doing another episode on Forever. I did watch it a second time through, so let's go ahead and talk about it. Alrighty, so what do I want to talk about in this episode? So, as I mentioned, I did go through and watch it again. I wasn't planning to watch it all the way through. I usually do not do that, or if I do decide to watch it a second time through, I will wait a little bit longer before doing so. But I really was not ready to leave this universe, so I started watching the first episode and I just continued watching it. I didn't watch all 8 episodes through, which is what I did not do the first time, and so I took a little bit more breaks in between the episodes, so it took me a little bit longer to finish it. And I also found myself getting distracted and having to come back to it and kind of force myself to finish. Normally I do not rewatch it like I just said, so I think that played a part of it, because it's not that I didn't feel the same intensity in terms of the feelings that I was feeling while watching this TV show, but it just did not hit the same way because I knew what to expect. So that first watch is really truly something magical, because you have no idea what to expect and you get to feel everything so much more intensely because you literally have no idea what's coming. So I did not read the book Forever, so I had no idea what the actual storyline was and how it could possibly turn out. So I was really coming into this with no knowledge of what I was watching, what was going to happen, and so on. And so it really was a magical experience that first time around. Now, I know in the first episode I talked about my emotional state. I talked about how I got depressed basically in episodes 7 and 8, and the last time I really felt that sad over a show was when I was watching In the Dark and when Max died at the end, because if you watched In the Dark, you know how much Max loves Murphy, and to just see the death of their relationship and knowing that no one is ever going to love her like that again was just so devastating to me. Like, I actually cried, and I was telling my therapist about it and just how strong of a reaction I had to it and what it really made me think about in terms of my own life. So obviously I did not cry over Forever, but I almost felt that level. And I think if Justin or Keisha had died, and more specifically if Justin had died, I probably would have cried, because that would have been the end of their relationship and my heart could not have taken that. And so I think that was the only thing that kept me from experiencing that intense level of grief that I experienced within the dark. But I do want to say that it really did play on my emotions, even watching it a second time through and knowing what to expect, because I knew what moments were coming up that were going to make me sad and all of that stuff. There were some scenes where I didn't want to watch just because I didn't want to deal with the feelings, like the scene where Quincy, Keisha's dad, is interrogating Justin. I wanted to fast forward through that scene for some reason, but I made myself watch it, and there's nothing, it's not like a depressing scene or really sad. It makes you angry at how he's treating Justin, but there were just some moments that I kind of didn't want to relive again, if that makes sense. But for the most part, my emotions were more stable through the second watch, since I knew what was coming and what to expect and I could prepare myself for it. But I do think that this show really does hit you in your feelings. Okay, now that we've watched the show a second time through, I can definitely say that this show is top tier. I said that in my first episode, and this show is really up there with Love Jones, Love and Basketball, The Word, The Best Man, all of those movies. I know this is a TV show, so it's different, but I really think that this TV show is going to become a cult classic. It's gonna almost be like how Friends was for white people, and how it's something that white people continuously watch over and over and talk about, what, 25 years later. I think that Forever is going to have that type of impact, but I don't know if it will get as many seasons. So that is the interesting thing. And even if it's just 1 or 2 seasons or 2 or 3 seasons, whatever, I still think that it's going to have a big impact on the Black community because of just how successful and well received season 1 has been. Now, in terms of young people, what I want to say is from my childhood, I know that I had Black TV shows I could watch growing up. So, In the House, Moesha, Fresh Prince, The Cosby Show, and all of that. And those were sitcoms, so those hit differently. Like, they are still trying to deliver those everyday life lessons that young people should learn as they're growing up. But I think when you have, like, a drama that's, like, not so much interacting with the audience the way a sitcom is, I think you can tell a story a little bit differently and you can deliver the message in a more intense way than you would with a sitcom. And so I'm jealous that I did not have a show like this growing up. Like, we had teen dramas, but I did not have a all-Black teen drama that I could watch. If I'm being honest, that was this type of teen drama, if that makes sense. And so yeah, I'm really sad that I did not have this experience, because I feel like if I were a teenager watching Forever Now, I would be so hopeful and so inspired. And then also how I talked about, like, there's not a whole lot of trauma dumping as far as what it's like to be Black and all of that stuff. There's hints of it, but they do not focus on that because that's not the point of the story. And so if I were a Black person watching this, a young Black person watching this, I would be aspiring to live the kind of life that they talk about in Forever, and there's so many reasons why I say that. One thing I didn't talk about in my first episode was the soundtrack. So there were a lot of songs that I was familiar with from just either hearing it either in other TV shows and movies, or kind of seeing the song in a reel or something like that on social media. But there was a lot of new songs I had not heard before, and I downloaded probably about 5 new songs that I really love. And it's really crazy because when I hear this song on its own, I may not like it as much, but because I heard it and I can associate the song with a specific memory of the TV show, I think that makes it more intense when I go to listen to the song on its own. Because there's other songs like that where, for example, Love and Basketball, there's a song, I Want to Be Your Man. Anytime I listen to that song, I think of the scene of them dancing at the school dance in Love and Basketball. And then the other day I was watching a video for Save the Last Dance, and there's a song that Athena Cage sings. I can't remember the title of it, but anytime I listen to that song, I'm going to think of the final dance in Save the Last Dance. So there are a lot of songs that I was not familiar with, and because I heard the song in this TV show, I'm always going to associate the song with this TV show. And so I was just really glad that I had that opportunity to learn new songs, because that's the only way that I learn new songs, because I do not listen to the radio. So I have no idea what's hot right now, and it does help that they will play older songs in TV shows and movies, so that it's not just all new songs or whatever was released whatever year it is. So it does allow me to kind of go back and kind of see what might have been trending or really hot back in 2018, 2019, which is when this TV series was set. And so that's a good way for you to learn music or learn about new songs if you are like me and you do not listen to the radio. So this soundtrack really added to all of the intensity of the TV series and the different scenes and the moment, because one thing I've always been jealous of is the person who is responsible for the soundtrack of a TV show or a movie. Because one, yes, you have to be familiar with a lot of songs, but you have to pick the right song that gives the feelings that you want the moment to create. Because you could pick a completely different song and you don't know how that's going to change how people receive or how people walk away from that scene feeling or thinking. So can you imagine if for that train scene they played, for example, an Usher song? Like, you would have a completely different vibe or feeling about that scene depending on what song is playing. So I really think that this person who did the sound or was responsible for the soundtrack did a really good job of playing and picking the right songs for each moment. Now, something I didn't talk about in my first video was I did look at the reviews and comments on Twitter after I finished watching a second time through, and I did see someone comment on how the actor reminded them of the actor Jerome Jill or something like that from When They See It, and he did the crazy eyes thing that he does in that TV show, and I could see it more specifically when Justin was at the movies with Keisha and she was upset and she walked out, and you can see him like frantically trying to figure out how to fix the situation, and that reminded me of how Corey felt when he was testifying, and just like the desperation and really trying to fix the situation, get out of the situation, and make things better, and feeling like you can't, and feeling like you're not able to get your point across, you're not able to communicate everything that you're feeling and get someone to believe you. So in that moment, if you go back and you look at it and you see his facial expressions, you see his body language, you can see how well he is playing up the emotion and the intensity of the situation. Because obviously we know that Keisha is upset, but we also know that Justin has no idea what she's talking about, and he's genuinely confused and trying to figure out what's going on. And it's just really well done how you can see all of the emotions on his face and in his eyes in that moment. Okay, so now Dawn and Shelly as moms. I saw that Dawn got a lot of flack on social media, and I actually like Dawn as a mom. Yes, she is overbearing, but one, she was very connected to her kids. She could tell when something was wrong with them, and she was more close to guessing what was wrong with them than Shelly was. So I feel like in terms of TV moms, Dawn is like the ideal TV mom. She's like, for this role, she's going to be known as a good TV mom, in my opinion, the way that Eric is going to be known as a good TV dad. And so the reason why I say that is because Shelly was annoying because I'm not talking about the actress, I'm talking about the character of Shelly. Shelly just seemed like she had no idea what was going on and she was just out of it. I don't want to say that she seemed like an airhead. But she really was just not in tune with anything. And the reason why I say that is because there's two scenes I want to talk about. There's this scene where Dawn is, we talked about this in the first video, where Dawn is observing Justin's reaction to Keisha and Kristen talking, and she can see how upset and frustrated he is by what he's seeing, and she knows that something's wrong, and she correctly perceives that her son is being disrespected by how Kristen and Keisha are acting, right? Even though we don't know, we find out after the fact what they talked about, but from watching and observing it, you can see that there's something kind of disrespectful happening if Keisha and Justin are supposed to be dating, and here she is interacting with her ex in a certain way. And so she correctly, because she has more knowledge than Shelly, you can say that this is why she's able to correctly perceive that her son is being disrespected, but she is just observing and watching the dynamics, and that is how she is able to be so in tune with what her son is going through and what he's feeling. Even if he doesn't want to talk to her about it, she is closer to guessing the truth and understanding the situation. Shelly was super annoying because there's a moment where Kristen sends Keisha flowers, and Shelly, at first, she's like, oh, he's either a promposer or he's trying to apologize for something. And that was Keisha's opportunity to tell her mom what was going on, but Shelly ruined it because she's like, oh, well, he's doing a good job of making up for it. And it was just like this stupid comment that just showed that she was focused on the wrong things and completely out of tune with whatever her daughter was feeling, which made it difficult for Keisha to open up to her. And I also understand that Dawn had moments where she was really frustrated and she couldn't communicate properly with her kid, and I really don't like the moment where she walked out on Justin when he was telling them that he didn't want to go to Northwestern. He wanted to focus on being a music producer and all of that stuff. I didn't like that moment when she walked out, but I think she had a lot more good moments as a mom than Shelly did, because Shelly was very surfacey as a mom. She didn't really get into anything deep with Keisha, and I think that is what motivated Keisha to kind of keep her at a distance and not really let her in. And we see the stereotypical black mom when Shelly finds out what's really going on, and she's just complaining about, oh well, I have to go to work now because I have to pay for another school that I can't afford because you got kicked out of this whatever. So we see her kind of going off, and she's worried about how it affects her, and she's not again thinking about her daughter and the implications of what she's hearing. She's just thinking about how she feels about the situation. So her and Dawn have those moments, but I think in general, Dawn does a better job of being a mom, of being in tune with her kids and kind of really wanting to connect with them and listen to them, whereas Shelly, you don't really have that opportunity, because I just feel like the way that Shelly's character was written, there was no depth there until Keisha was forced to give depth to her mother in that situation where she told her about what was going on. And so that was just something that I noticed in terms of the conversation around the two women as moms. I definitely prefer Dawn a little bit more as a mom because I feel like she has a career, she's passionate about it, but she's also very passionate about her family life, and she's super involved as a mom. I know that she makes more money, and so she can kind of maybe be around a little bit more, but we see her being so much more involved with her kid than we see Shelly involved with Keisha. And you can say that it's because she has two jobs and so on, but we just don't really see her giving Keisha that one-on-one, that quality time where she's actually listening to Keisha and she's giving her an opportunity to share her life. It's just really surfacey. And so yeah, I'll just leave that conversation there. The other thing that really bothered me in my initial watch and my second watch was I could not figure out why George did not like Justin, because I remember he brought it up when he was taking Keisha to her early morning workout, and I think he said something about her hanging out with that Edwards kid, Justin, whatever. And then we saw that moment where they were at the amphitheater, they were arguing, and then he's like, hey, what's going on here? And we saw him watch them walk over there, and we could see that he was overly concerned about it. So I still don't understand why he does not like Justin. Does he have a problem with the family? Does he not like the dad? Is he like, what is it about him? What is it about Justin that makes him seem like he does not like Justin for Keisha? The other thing that I wanted to talk about is Justin's family wealth. So I really like that we know that Justin's family has money. We know that Keisha is less well off compared to Justin's family, but I like that we didn't really see the family squabble over the different stations in life. So we didn't see moments of Justin's family talking about how Keisha was poor and how she was in a bad part of town or anything like that, but I feel like that's probably something very stereotypical that you would see, where maybe his parents wouldn't have wanted him with Keisha because of her circumstances and how she grew up and how she's raised and all of that stuff. And so we didn't really see that. And then we also didn't see, when Keisha's family went to Justin's house, we didn't see them making any slicker side comments about how the family was living and how they were well off and all of that. So we didn't see that tension when it came to financial status. And I didn't know if that was because Keisha was friends with Chloe, and so she would have been around people who had money. But I think it's different when you have it being both families are Black, because then it feels like, oh, we're not all living the same way. Even saw when one of Keisha's cousins was like, oh, have you ever been this far below the 10 or something like that before? And he was like, yeah, I train in Compton sometimes. So you would have had more of those stereotypes of, oh, he's stuck up, he acts white, he doesn't come to this part of town. And then you would have had whatever comments about Keisha and how she lives in whatever part of town that she does. And so I was really glad that that didn't really come up a whole lot. And one thing I thought was interesting going back to the moms is that in relation to wealth and where the families live, we saw that Dawn had to take Keisha home, and we didn't really hear her complain about how far the drive was or anything like that, or how she was going to a sketchy part of town, anything like that. It was just, let me drive you home, okay, we're going back home, and then that's it. And I really liked how Dawn talked about him putting in an equal amount of effort and how he had to go to her house. It wasn't like Dawn was saying, oh, you can't go over to her house because I don't know where she lived, I don't like that area. There was none of that. It was just, put in an equal amount of effort. If she comes here, you need to go there. And there wasn't really this conversation about how the families lived very differently. So I really liked that they did not really dive into that too much. Now, one scene that really bothers me that I did not talk about in my first video is when they are in Martha's Vineyard and we see that moment where Dawn runs into Keisha on the island and she's not happy about it. She wants to tell Justin, but she also wants to have a conversation to see how he's feeling and if he's ready to receive this news. I think she would have told him if their conversation didn't go sideways, but because it did, that's why she chose not to tell him, because she couldn't connect with him. And so in that moment, one thing that bothered me is when she was accusing him of basically claiming somebody else's work as his own and then also basically accusing him of being a thief. I really hated that conversation because she obviously did not know anything about what he was doing, like the technique, the process, or anything like that. And so she just made a lot of assumptions and she ended up offending him. And then also, can you imagine if he didn't want to do music after that because of the way she was talking about it? And I understand that he said that he was using plugins, but I also know that for songs, there are some songs that are in the public domain, so you can use them without, I guess, like violating like copyright law or whatever. And so I assume that that's what he was doing. And I didn't like that she just made the assumptions that he was basically taking credit for stuff that he didn't do. Like, he did do work to create a new version of the song, had more to it, to where it still had that same chord or same bass, but it also sounded very different. But basically, I thought she should have had more knowledge before she accused him of that, because one, she damaged their relationship in that moment because she was trying to connect with him, but she was just trying to be rude for no reason, that she ended up ruining the moment, and then she couldn't even tell her son what she went there to tell him. So I did not like that moment between them. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the romantic scenes between Keisha and Justin. I felt like at times it was the actor taking over instead of the character doing things. It's a weird thing to say. I think I talked about this in my first video, where Justin seems like he's inexperienced, he's shy, but then there's moments where he seems really confident, and there were things that he was doing and how he was handling Keisha that made it seem like it was the actor taking over and doing what he would normally do in real life, because I just can't picture someone who's inexperienced behaving the way that Justin would. And I don't know if this is maybe just him seeing or mimicking what he sees on TV, but I feel like there were moments where you could tell it was kind of the actor kind of coming out versus the character behaving that way, if that makes sense. So yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about was early decisions. So because I played college basketball and I went to college on a scholarship, I didn't have to apply for college the traditional way. So I had no idea what early decision was, and I didn't realize that you could only apply to one school, and then if you got accepted, you had to go to that school. Obviously, if you want to go to that school really badly, you're going to do early decision, but if you're not sure, it's going to be a little bit more complicated because you can't apply to other schools in early decision and then so on. So yeah, so I didn't really understand that, and now that I understand, I can see why it was so difficult for him to figure out where he wanted to go, because by doing early decision, he was essentially committing to Northwestern, and then he had to wait until like December to find out if he actually got in, and then if he didn't get in, then he could start applying to other schools. So it was like his life was on hold while he was waiting to hear back to see if he got into Northwestern. And so now that I understand that a little bit better, I can see kind of why he seemed like he was so unsure of himself, because that decision, that early decision seemed like it was so, there was so much weighing on that, and if he didn't get into that school, it would have just felt like he was starting everything all over in terms of applying to schools. And then with his grades, with basketball, it just seemed like it would have been super late in the fourth quarter for him to be trying to figure out what his next steps are and where he's going to go to school. And the other thing that brings up is I did not understand why Dawn said that her and Eric got a lot wrong when it came to his basketball and where he was going to school. I'm assuming that Eric either played high school and or college basketball, so he should have had a little bit more knowledge of how well, you need to do in high school in order to get to college. And the other thing that I'm glad about is that they did not introduce NIL stuff to this TV series, because I feel like that would have complicated everything with the basketball part of it. So they really just kept it old school. And so I didn't know why, if Eric had a background in basketball, why they didn't either move him to a different school so that he could get playing time. That's normally what people do. Like, if you go to a school and you want your kid to play there, but they're not doing well, they're not getting playing time, you actually send them to another school where they might get more opportunities. And so I don't know why Justin's parents did not do something like that if they really were trying to use basketball as a way for him to get to college, because obviously you need playing time, you need a coach who believes in you, you need to get interest from D1 schools if you want to play D1. And so it was really sad when he had that moment in the amphitheater where he was talking with Keisha, and he was saying that he had no D1 schools searching for him, and that tells you how late in the game it is for him, because my mom would always say that by junior year you want to know where you're going. And I feel like that's kind of, if you're a serious basketball player, that's kind of common knowledge. You want to commit to a school early, you want to know where you're going, you want to take that pressure off of you. And so I feel like his parents definitely made missteps when it came to that, but I don't really understand why, because I would assume that they would know more just from Eric's situation, what it actually took to get to college and play basketball, not even considering walking on as an option, but getting a full ride to college to play basketball. And one other thing I want to call out is that in my second watch, I realized that he did not play basketball his senior year, which is what his mom was telling him when they had that conversation about how he was going to just focus on getting his grades up, not play basketball. So I think the 7th and 8th episodes went by really quickly because we didn't have those basketball scenes, which I did not pick up on the first time around. And I guess that's why it just made everything seem like it went faster, because they had the summer break and then they had them kind of interacting, going to prom, and then all of that stuff. It just seemed like everything kind of went faster in episodes 7 and 8 compared to the first 6 episodes, which covered almost maybe a year and a half of the timeline. Okay, so now I want to talk about some best moments that we did not talk about in my first episode. So I really loved the moment where they were in the kitchen after that game where he balled out, and his family was just making fun of him for how well he played, and they were just talking about, oh, there's only one reason that would make a man play like that, you know, got him balling out and all of this stuff. And so they were just having a good time of making fun of him, but also celebrating him for doing so well in his basketball game, because prior to that, he was really struggling. The other thing that I really liked was the scene in Martha's Vineyard where we see Justin listening to all of Keisha's voicemails, and she's talking about how she feels like she's in space, and she's leaving like video logs or whatever. And so I think because she left so many voice messages and we got to hear like what she was saying, that was kind of a way for them to reconnect and him to fall in love with her again. And so I really liked that we see him listening to those voice messages, and then we see her calling him the next day and he answers, and they have that moment where they reunite. And just to go back, my other favorite moment is when he's trying to apologize to her for what happened at the movie theater. Then his mom takes his phone, grounds him, and then he has to figure out how to get in her good graces again. He sees her at the park, and then I really love that moment when they were arguing, and basically she's making fun of him about his playing time, and then he's like, I'm sorry, why am I arguing with the traffic cone? I thought that was really clever and really funny, because I don't know why she felt like she could make fun of him for his playing time and how word got around, and then get mad at him when he made a comment that was in the same vein as what she was saying. Like, he wasn't even talking about her sex tape, he was just talking about the fact that she was dissing him basically for his basketball skills when she's really not in a position to talk about how people are talking about him. And so I feel like that added to the awkwardness of him playing Kristen's school, because obviously we can see that Kristen is actually much more skilled as a basketball player than Justin is. And so it's just so awkward that you would make fun of him for getting benched and not playing, and then knowing that your ex-boyfriend is next to LeBron. That's kind of an awkward comparison and an awkward situation for your new boyfriend to be in, especially if he's passionate about basketball, he enjoys basketball, but then he has to acknowledge and deal with the fact that your ex-boyfriend is this superstar, famous to be NBA player, and just having to deal with that, and then knowing how you Keisha feel about his basketball skills. I think that's just really awkward, and I think that also played into how he was feeling about her coming to his basketball game where he was playing Christian school. Alrighty, so that's everything that I want to talk about in this video. We covered quite a lot. I'm really excited and glad that I watched this a second time through. I definitely am going to watch it a third time through. I just really want to be back in that universe and just kind of experience everything all over again. I don't know how long it will take me to watch it again, or if I'll even get all the way through, but I know that I definitely want to rewatch at least the first 3 episodes, and I'm actually really excited about that. So I am going to cut off this video and I'm going to go and watch more forever. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.